So I have a subject I'd like to bring up for us to chat on. I finally, this morning, calculated I've been roughly studying this Course in Miracles for 40-some years. So when I had this experience this morning, it was kind of surprising, kind of shocking for me. I, as I usually do, went inside this morning and asked Brother what I should do today. And he said, it's time for you to change the purpose of the world, you see. And I said, oh, good. And after breakfast, then what? But the more I got to thinking about it, the more I recognized that I have seen a different purpose for this world. I have allowed, in other words, I have allowed myself to be influenced by things unknown and unrecognized. You see what I'm saying? That each time we don't consciously fix a purpose for the world that we see, we allow the ego translation of what the world is to come and be our own image. So it's really, really important for us to consciously define for ourselves what we would like for this world to demonstrate to us. And I'd like to have each of you, if you wouldn't mind, to just take a couple of minutes and ask yourself what purpose your world serves for you. And then maybe we could share what comes up as a result of that. Anything come up for you that you'd like to share?
I would like to say, you gave me a big aha. I've been contemplating on the fact that where we live seems to it's judgmental, so I'm trying to say, okay, how do I do this? How do I think these thoughts when I know that they're judgmental? But it's the new people that are moving in don't seem to have the care of property that was around. Like, people have had the cars broken into. We got sideswiped and the guy didn't own up to it. It was obvious that the car next to us did it, but there was no way to prove it, and it was just, and there it again, that's all. So I was trying not to look at the surface stuff, but I realized when you said, I didn't make a purpose for my world in that area. Now the purpose, my family and my close friends and everything, I have a purpose for them, love and gratitude, and it comes through all the time. But in that area, I had no purpose for that world, that scene of the people that were just acquaintances or just nods to or whatever. I had no purpose for them. No, I wasn't seeing them with it. So consequently, judgment got in there.
It will.
Yeah.
It will automatically be.
And I'm not sure I've let it go totally, but I'm, at least I'm aware of it. But I'm working on that.
That reminds me of chapter 30, the rules of decision, because it says every day you say, what kind of day do you want? You want to have, and you'll have that kind of day.
Yes.
So I ask for a peaceful world, and that's given to me. So in any situation you're in, you're looking for peace. You're not looking for conflict. You're not looking. So you find it. You're looking for it. That's the goal. Doesn't always happen.
That's a good goal. Anyone else?
I found that when I'm not looking for it or don't expect it, even with such crazy stuff going on that I get really upset about in the world and our country, that it seems like friends and family are there with love all the time. I'm not explaining what I feel, but it's just that it's there all the time, even though I feel like our world is so crazy that it kind of counteracts all that. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it just feels like that a lot. Even though I'm trying to disregard everything, that's not disregard, but try not to let that upset me. Everything that you hear about in the news and all that, and this feeling of love and caring comes through more than that does. And it just makes for a good day.
Brother told me a long time ago that the God Self automatically converses with you throughout the day. And it's always giving you the opportunity to see whatever is happening, whatever happens to be going on in a way that will show you a better way to see. That will
That's great.
Too late.
So when we take the time,
We're going to have to find a chair.
It's one of the other.
so when we take the time to ask, we bring our consciousness to the point of being able to communicate with the God Self. So we recognize, or we can at least, recognize more clearly what the purpose for the day is going to be.
You have
Or
a
wants
choice
to
every
be.
day.
Pardon me?
You have a choice
Every
night
day.
as to what you want to see.
Yeah. But if we don't, if we just kind of coast along and let things slide, it's like two communications that miss.
What came to me when you asked the question, I just shut my eyes and pondered it for a minute. What came to me was, this world teaches me about love. But I think sometimes the way we're taught about love is to see a lot of unloving occurrences, And so I was thinking about that, and then I thought right away, that line from the poem I just read. Hourly remember why it is we came. Bring the love of God into this children's game.
Indeed.
Well, the first thing that came was love, but then I thought, why do we need a world? Why do we need to come back to this world? Why can't we remain spirit?
That's what I used to ask when I was a little kid. Why did I have to come here? Why couldn't I stay in spirit?
Yeah, I mean, if we know who we are and we don't need to be healed, we're perfect and whole as spirit, why do we have to come back why do we have to have a world?
Maybe to teach other people what you have learned.
Well, I don't know, but that's what I thought afterwards. So.
I thought about that too, and the thing that came to me is the idea of being the eternal child of God. Oh, that means there's nothing else but being somewhere. So why not here? Well, here's good enough for me right now. Maybe later on it won't be, and then I'll go find some other place to be. And I don't know if there's any truth to that or not.
I don't either, but I just, that came to me and I thought, well, I'll just put it out there.
Well, at least you're going to go through your day consciously,
Yes.
rather than just like the bumper cars, bump here and bump there. Not
No.
really recognize why anything is happening. But if we are conscious about it, we can access this constant flow of communion that goes on between us and our God self.
We can live in heaven.
And one of the most important things is that at least we become aware that there is a communion going on. What it is secondary. That it is primary.
So what came to me is that the purpose of my world is that it offers me a continuous, non-stop opportunity to forgive and to love. And that through that, it's like to forgive, to love, and return home to myself. And somehow through this just absolutely and totally falling in love, being in love with whatever is before me, whatever is appearing in that world, it's almost like the return home to myself is accessing what's beyond it. That's beautiful.
And if you're looking for peace, that's the way you do it. You know, so if you're looking for everything, you forgive and you love.
I've been going through a really amazing time in my life. I've always felt like there was something so much missing. And I would get into relationships and I would be looking to fill what was missing from the other person. And just to pick, and I developed lately, recently, I had a list of all the things that I thought I was missing, that I was looking for in my prior marriage. And, for instance, intuitiveness. I didn't think I had anything like that. Or compassion and innocence, and openness. These were things that I thought were missing in my life. And what I've been doing, what I've found happening to me in my life recently or for quite some time now, is I started looking at every experience as an opportunity to ask myself, who am I in relation to this experience? How do I identify with this? And if I'm having a conflict, I would say, well, who am I in relation to this? And I would think, well, I'm to love. And so I'm to look past what this person is demonstrating is the anger or whatever, and to see the love that lies within. And then I would walk away from that experience, or later I would reflect on it, and I would realize that I'm love. And then I started finding that I contained within me, there was intuition, and there was compassion, and there were all these things that I thought were missing. And so this jump out of an airplane was a very, very meaningful, significant event for me. When I jumped out of the plane, I found myself in space, and we were above the clouds, so there was nothing to see. You couldn't see the ground or the buildings. There was nothing to relate to. It was just me, and it was such I was just in complete wonder the whole time down until I softly sat on the grass. But I'm walking back to the hangar, and I walk in the hangar, and I just felt like I wanted to cry. And I thought, what is this all about? And then it happened again a little later. We were just hanging around getting our gear off, and I felt the same thing. Well, I've had a chance to reflect on it, and I realized that that sense of, when I was up there, I had this sense of, I want to just say fearlessness and wholeness. I don't know how to describe it. What's
Completeness.
completeness, safety. I don't know. It was just it was such an incredible experience. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's like it's symbolic of my life, of where I am in my spiritual life right now. Because I've come to this place where I realize there's nothing missing in me. I'm whole. I have all of everything. And, you know, and then and so I came away with that, just feeling like and then you ask, you know, what's my vision of what the world means to me? And I think the world means to me, it's a place where I have all these experiences, and every experience is an opportunity to see myself. And the Spirit helps me do that. And by seeing myself, I discover that I'm love. And by seeing what I am able to love and extend that outward. And it's just, anyway,
Great adventure.
that's it.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
That to me epitomizes the phrase, the adventure of loving.
An adventure.
The adventure of loving.
Mm-hmm.
Because you suddenly find all of these parts of yourself that you have divorced.
Yes.
And as you embrace them, wow, it opens another door for experiencing love, loving yourself.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Could keep going, isn't it?
Oh, I know. It's just like everything's just, it's every day is just so exciting. It's like, what's going to happen today? Who am I going to meet today?
Yeah.
You know, I seen him walk in today, he just looks totally different. What did he do? You know, when a guy shaves, he looks like a little kid. Well, there's something about him, looks like a little kid again. You didn't shave, right? Because you didn't have a mustache.
I shaved for you.
You weren't at yesterday morning's meeting, but I said the same thing about Scott and
Yeah.
Ron.
Did you?
They both look younger.
That's fantastic. It's like spiritual experience.
Scott didn't shave you.
Actually, I thought they both looked like little boys. I thought all three of them looked like little boys that had done something. They had such a. Ron was just like, he was like, oh, I can't. But really, they looked like, you know, you see your little son come in or something where they've just done something that they really, really know that was, you know, really great, and it's all written all over their faces. That's the way these three were yesterday.
Yeah, I felt that way just watching the video of him doing it.
Yeah. I've decided to buy an airplane.
Your son knows.
Who's going to fly it? Okay.
So could I read another poem?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Adventure
Yeah,
in
I used to
Loving.
fly.
I took this from your
From this one.
previous title for your book. I thought, well, that's a great title for a poem. Adventure in Loving. It said that there is nothing as rewarding as this adventure in loving, and our reason for being here is to extend His love so near. Our only purpose for living is to simply be forgiving. For this entire world of form is not true, and we must forgive everyone for what they did not do. No matter what it is that we may face, our job is to spread God's love and accept His grace. Kind of goes right along with what people have been
It
saying.
sure does.
I'm going to bring this book with me every week now, so you guys are going to hear it.
You know, I was going to say one more thing in regards to your the adventure of loving. That it's just, as my life has opened up, and it's like I just stepped, it's like I turned the last page of the last chapter, and now I'm looking at the next chapter, and it's like, am I ready to step into this next phase of my life? Because it's like now it's just all about joining and reaching out and loving and connecting with everybody I run into. And this idea of all these experiences being our teacher is that you don't have to jump out of an airplane to have an experience. I have these experiences at the checkout counter at the grocery store, or talking to the guy that cleans boats at the marina. And it's just like everywhere I go, I find myself just having these amazing connections where you just stop and you talk to them and ask them and what's going on in their life, and you're interested in them. And suddenly they open up and you start talking, and pretty soon you're hugging them and saying, thanks for having a conversation. And they can be a complete stranger. There was a gal at the airport, and remember the gal was 85. She comes up to me and she says, how old are you? And I said, I'm 76. And she says, that's the age I was when I started diving. And then we just started chatting, and then pretty soon, I gave her a hug, and we just said, this is just great. Thank you for visiting with me. But that's the way my life is now. It's just from one hug to the next. It's like,
Happy way to heaven.
That's the way to go. There you go.
That's great. Like you're in heaven.
Try to be consciously aware that these next chapters are being written for you, not by you.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Well, it's interesting.
Yes.
You mentioned connection, and that was the word that came to me. The purpose of my world is to make connections, to connect, to join. But then I got a little taken aback, because then what came to me was you experience hate. And then I thought, but I experience more love than hate. But then I started thinking about that, and what came to me was to be more mindful of what I want the purpose of my world to be, because hate can show up all the time. And is that how I want to connect? If my purpose is to connect, then to make sure that it is always in peace and in love. And you can see hate, but you can change it, or you can look behind it, or you can,
Yeah, because love is what connects. The hate
Yes,
doesn't connect.
yeah.
So it's just sort of bypassing the image of it. And
Yeah,
it's like love reaching to itself.
yeah. So in that sense, it made the hate less fearful or insignificant.
It allows you to leave it behind,
Yeah.
because you're suddenly not attached to it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us have said that we don't want to come back and go through this what do they call this little
Nightmare,
wheel of going around, around, around.
reincarnation.
A reincarnation after No. The point is that we will come back. But if we are determined to write the script, then it will be the same wheel that we have always been on. But if we allow ourselves now to become aware that there is another opportunity, there is another way for it to happen, just that the God self, that's the purpose of the God self, incidentally. That's the way that God has established for us to break through this repetitive nonsense that we've been going through. Brother calls it forgiveness, seeing again, which is what forgiveness, of course, is. So do that. Ask. That's the whole purpose of asking when you get up in the morning. What would you have me do today? Not that what he's going to say of the thing you do is going to be terribly significant or not. It is the point that you have turned it over, that you have allowed a different influence now to be in control of your life experience. Anyone else have something they'd like to share?
You were supposed to tell us something significant that's happening. You were supposed to tell us today that there's something significant
Oh, you
happening.
mean what Josh told you last week?
Yes.
Today is the day the book is being released. So,
Today's the day what?
The
book is
being released.
so as of tomorrow, and please, for everybody here, don't order a copy. I've ordered a whole bunch of copies that I would like to give you. So just gonna have to wait until they get here, that's all.
And I promised John. I saw John at church Sunday, and I told him.
John,
Ackland?
Ackland, that lives in Squim, that was here for years.
He was here, he hasn't been here for
Well,
almost a couple of years
he
now.
still has his job, but
Anthropologist, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah. I promised I would get your book for him. He said to say hi to everybody.
So there's 2 volumes to John's book. It's like 2 of these.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Does it come in a
Really?
set? Does it come as a set?
Wow.
it comes either way. It comes either way, but it's just that I felt that a book that thick was gonna be too awkward to handle. So it's
Well,
strictly for
I
me.
mean, I don't know. We're all doing just fine.
There you go.
Maybe I didn't want to compete with that.
Oh, yeah.
After having read most of your first book, you're crazy if you don't buy the second one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But I mean, do they come in as a set also?
You can get them as a set.
As a set?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I will be giving you a set. So,
But if we want more, we can go online and order.
it's my understanding that that's happening right now.
So Amazon has it.
Amazon has it. And there was a glitch in the Kindle publication. It was a glitch of ISBN numbers. And I don't quite know how that all worked itself out. But we gave them an ISBN number, and then they automatically assigned a number to it, and the two were the different numbers. So when they started to publish the book, they said, wait a minute, we got two different ISBN numbers. So they had to straighten that all out. But anyway, it's just mechanics, and it'll all happen.
Well, I thought it had to do, and, you know, as far as bestsellers, is that a certain number, if they're sold immediately, puts you right on the New York Times bestseller list. And my thought was that to just send out to all the different Course in Miracles organizations and groups and stuff that would want to know about that.
I mean,
They're available now.
are they? Good. That's the one thing I'm not in charge of.
One thing or what?
I am not in charge of that.
Marketing is what he's not in charge of.
Wherever the book goes, it will go, or wherever it doesn't go, it won't go. It's,
No, that's the target market.
And the covers look the same, except one says "Let Love Find You," and the other one is "Let Love Find You."
the other one says the subtitles are different.
Yeah, the subtitles are
The
different.
subtitle on volume 1 is "Have You Heard God Calling?" And the subtitle on volume 2 is The Adventure of Loving.
Yeah, explore the adventure of
Explore
loving.
the adventure of loving. So, if you don't mind being a little bit more patient when they'll come in. Anyway, Teddy, that's
Thank
the
you.
only thing I can think of that
That's what it was.
was it. Is that the page one?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up?
What does the course say? Infinite patience brings immediate results.
Something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think Wayne Dyer used to say that. Right?
Oh, I got it from the course.
Probably.
Any more comments? Okay, Thomas, do you have something you'd like to go over?
Sure, we can continue where we left off on in the manual for teachers. And last week we did section 17 of the manual for teachers on page 44, which was how do God's teachers deal with magic thoughts? And the section before that on how should the teacher of God spend his day, just to review a little bit, it talks about connecting in the mornings and in the evenings in particular, with the understanding that we've got busy days within the dreams, and sometimes we can't always ask in the moment. So it's good to set up the day, and then if you recall, we did go to chapter 30, to the rules for decision, and review those rules. The idea of what kind of day we want. If I make no decisions by myself, this is the day that will be given me, and then the blocks that can come up when it seems we've started making decisions by ourselves and don't realize it, but become angry, then we can stop and say, I have no question, I forgot what to decide. And then if we're still stuck and angry, we can get to a point where we say, well, at least I can decide I do not like the way I feel now. And then the next step is, so I hope I have been wrong. And then it goes, perhaps there is another way to look at this. What can I lose by asking, type of thing. So that's this is covered in quite a bit here, because it starts in 16 and it goes already all the way through 18, 16, 17, and 18. The end of this thing on how should a teacher spend his day, the last paragraphs 8 through 11 in 16 talk about magic thoughts. And magic thoughts are basically, anybody recall what are considered to be magic thoughts? Basically anything we try to think outside of God. Any thoughts we want to have in our mind that are from the ego. It says, there are times his certainty will waver, and the instance this occurs, he will return to the earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone. Forget not, this is magic, and magic is a sorry substitute for true assistance. So that 16 led into the idea of how does a teacher of God deal with magic thoughts. And then we went to a place that talked about healing, and true healing versus the use of magic. And we talked about how, or the court, we read an area in the course that talked about the difference between them. And the main difference between them being that the magic part of a healer who considers himself or herself a healer, the magic part is that they have a special power that is within them that the person they're trying to help does not possess. Instead of realizing that the power is within everyone, and we're just attempting to have a singleness of purpose so we both want the same thing for each other. And at that singleness of purpose, realizing the power is within, and all we're trying to awaken within ourselves is this singleness of purpose to basically what we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting. Forgiveness, love, the oneness. If this is what we really want, then the teacher and the student need to be on that same path. Otherwise, we're going to have a teacher thinking the teacher is superior to the student, or in psychiatry, the psychiatrist thinking he's superior to the one he's trying to help. And that would be probably a very good example of magic thoughts in regard to magic thoughts for healing.
So are you saying that the correct way would be that if someone's on the table and the healer is performing an energy healing of some sort, that what's really happening, or the correct way is that both of them are conducting the healing?
Have you had Reiki classes? Yeah, we did too.
I've trained in tons of healing modalities, and that is what I've done for over the last 50 years.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part.
Healing, I said I've trained in a lot of different methods, including Reiki and all kinds of energy medicine and stuff. And it's always, to me, is to help people to know the power that's in them.
Yes.
That we are one in that power. And I'm simply helping to jumpstart or amp up, with them.
That's
That
correct.
the power in them is what heals. I don't have your answers, but I know some resources to help draw those out of you.
Yeah. Having said what I just said, the Course does say that there are those who temporarily have more and those who temporarily have less. But my understanding is the job of the teacher is to, through what the Course calls charity, envision, or use Christ visions would probably be better, the healed version of that person up the ladder already. The Course talks about charity where you see your brother further advanced than they see themselves. And this is how I would connect this with the idea of healing. And the idea, basically it boils down to the notion of equality within the dream. We came into this dream, Teddy, you said, why did we create this world? Why did we do this? Well, the Course tells us pretty clearly there was a thought that sharing everything with everyone was not enough, and we wanted to be special. So if you relate this now to healing or to magic thoughts, it's the idea that I can help you because I'm further along. But with that, there's a subtle double wish it talks about, saying that, but really, I want you to recognize that I'm helping you. Otherwise, I don't feel that I'm getting anything in return, and I'm giving and not receiving. There's a total lack of understanding of the equality of the two.
It's like when people would say, especially at retreats, we're sometimes gone for very long, extended hours, and helping people move people's bodies around and stuff, and people would say, don't you get tired? And I said, no, I get energy. Because it is a give and receive. And sometimes when people don't have a belief in their own self, and because of my own experience and my own system, as I just say, borrow my confidence in the power in you until you find it in yourself.
And that's basically what Jesus is telling us to do as well.
Right.
Faith will set you free.
After you said that one time, it just came to mind again. It happened years ago, and periodic had come up, but it hadn't for a long time until yesterday. And then I started reading the biography, my biography, Jesus, my biography, that book. And it just brought so much up. And in fact, I just had written it down when you asked about purpose again, because I was in a vision, just in a reality. I mean, it was like, but I was back in days, times of Jesus. And it was like this cavern, and there was like hundreds of people. And it was dark, but there was a light. And I thought, that everybody was listening to Jesus. And then his hand goes on my shoulder. And I turned, and it was Jesus. And he pointed, and he said, "No, that's you up there." And it just really came back very strong again when we were just talking, and when I was reading the book. That book is so good, because I said, that's my Jesus. That's what I know is true. The things that are being said in that book, I love that book. I couldn't put it down this morning.
I didn't hear you correctly.
That Jesus,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jesus, my biography.
I'm sorry.
When you asked me if I had Reiki training. Oh, I thought you were just asking me if I had Reiki. I had a session. No,
I did ask you that way. I meant, did you have training? But I think I said, have you had Reiki? And I didn't say training.
Okay. But what you're saying, I think, when I listen to that, I'm thinking of this analogy that I come from a carpentry background, and I think about teaching somebody carpentry. And the teacher has more knowledge than the student. And so you're showing that student, you're extending yourself to the student to demonstrate something, in this case woodworking. And the idea is to help the student observe this experience and then discover that they have that in themselves. And so when they walk away, they have what you have. Is that?
To use your analogy there, I guess the only thing I would say is, the way I understand what the Course is saying, yes, someone has the knowledge of a specific thing and can offer it, and the other can receive it. But the point is, they must see each other as equals in order for the process to be meaningful to the extent that it can. It can't be, well, come on, kid, I had an experience like this over the weekend. I'm trying to be nice and ask for help for the whole deal, and we've got grandkids, and I had my grandson get on my nerves once, and I jumped on him and didn't feel good about it. Then I had to deal with the guilt and all of that stuff, and then, it's hard when you're trying to teach someone something and they just seem to be oblivious, or even if they're probably worse, if they're argumentative, and this is what this is talking about. If they're saying no, this and that. So this is what it's saying when magic thoughts are thoughts we don't think with God, that come through our egos. And I reacted in one case through my ego, didn't feel good about it. I had set up for the whole trip to ask for the most benevolent outcome. It was going beautifully. It didn't ruin the trip. It wasn't horrible. I mean, it was something you shouldn't have done anyway, but my reaction to it bothered me. So it's that type of thing. If I had come from a place knowing when this particular incident happened, of splashing water on people with clothes on from a hot tub, then it's an equal, and I can say, I don't understand what's going on, show me. And the anger would never have come up at all.
and I think this is what I'm trying to get to, is my understanding of this, is that as long as they are at the same level, Jesus says very early in this, you should not worship me. You should respect me as you would an elder brother. And this is what I think can happen when we take this process or anything else and get good at it, and then it's, gosh, yeah, I'll help you out here, I'll show you, but you got to really look at me as really being important now, You got to give me my due as a teacher here. And what Jesus is talking about is respect should be there. But it makes it clear that respect for each of us should be there, because outside of time, we're each the Son of God.
This is what I love about this, is that that's the whole point of the first. I've only read about the first quarter, but this morning, and it's like puts him in the place of a person just like you and me. And it's just that the church tried to, wanted to make him something different than, whereas he says, I'm no different than you. So now that shows, I'm just showing you that I'm no different than you so that you can do it too, which is what the church didn't want. They didn't want people to feel self-empowered to do that. And he states that so well and makes himself real in this as not different than what we are.
I think that's an important part of it, is making it real, making himself real,
Absolutely. It's
and that
beautifully
reality is in each of us. And like Tom said earlier, that's always coming to us and available to come through us. And it's just our openness to it and our recognition.
Well, it's important to remember that what Brother is really trying to teach us in this process is not about the thing that we're learning, but that we're using the process itself to come together. That's the learning. Use the process to come together. So if a master carpenter teaches you how to do something, the thing that is being taught is irrelevant. But using that process of teaching to join, to come together, is what it's all about.
At what level, when you talk about coming together, at the egoic level, or?
You can't come together on an egoic level, Raj. The ego is incapable of joining.
I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
And I think
Coming
that-
together on the thing being taught would be the egoic
Yes.
level. Yes. But learning very early on in my experience with Brother, the very first time that I went to do a sharing, and that was back in the times of so-called channeling, and I had a process where I would envision him sitting on a bench in our garden, and I would sit in the grass at his feet, look at his eyes, and wait until I felt something begin to come through. And on this particular occasion I did, and he just smiled at me. And I said, well, come on, what are we going to talk about? He said, why don't you come up here and sit beside me? And it was like everything changed. Everything changed. Because I said, when he first said that, I said, well, who wants to listen to what I have to say? And he said, that's not the point. Come and sit beside me.
In other words, we're equals.
Yeah.
That's the missing part of my analogy, is that what I'm hearing you say is that you've got the student and the teacher, and the teacher recognizes that what he has come from a higher source, and that he is equal with his student.
The teacher also recognizes that the teacher is learning as the student is learning.
Right. So I love what you were saying about saying, I don't know, show me. Because that's what, I mean, we're continually being directed to do that, right? Give it up for reinterpretation.
Yes.
So that when we give, we can receive the truth of what we are, the truth of what it is, the just clarity we can receive. And then when you were talking about Reiki, and that immediately sets you on an equal ground, you know, with your grandson or, you know, whatever you were speaking about, because you're not over anything or even under anything or any of that. It's just, you don't know. And with Reiki, it's very similar, because it's really about you not being there. You're just a conduit. And as a conduit, without an ego involved, you know that, and that energy is from source, so it's coming through you into the other person, circulating all through that. It's all one big circulation happening. And it's not up to the practitioner what takes place at all.
It isn't, and that's where it goes back into it had about 5 sections on healing. And one of the sections is, should healing be repeated? And it says, no. If you have asked all requests, sincere requests to the Holy Spirit are received and carried out. And if you now say, should it be repeated, you are just removing your faith from that fact. And so now it says, now the teacher needs to be healed. Because the teacher has not turned it over. And it also says in that same section that one of the most difficult things to do is for the teacher to see in his perspective that the symptoms are still there, but still trust that the healing has been done. And so that goes right along with the idea of magic thoughts. If we ask for help from the heart, it tells us all prayers are from the heart are answered, even the ones that seem to be ego associated, although it didn't use that word. Simply, which this course calls wishes. They can be as strong or almost as strong. In one spot it says as strong as willing if they come from the heart. And we've all had ego wishes from the heart, but sometimes these were to God. And God answered when they were from the heart. That's been my experience, or the Holy Spirit, or however looking at it. I don't want to get too wrapped up in this because this is but I think this has been very important. But it's...
But one point there, when it says shouldn't be repeated for the same thing, but it doesn't mean that you've just swept clear everything in your life in one spot. So it doesn't mean that there isn't other opportunities for healings to happen, because it's like once you sweep out stuff, it's like almost then it uncovers, like peeling an onion. There's other things that may come up. And so it's not expecting that, oh, gee, it didn't work because now I'm feeling this. No, it's something else.
It tells us in the course to be specific on what we're
right, but you don't
directing.
always know until something is gone. It uncovers, and you don't even always know what else it may be.
Well,
to ask for.
Yeah, there will be this whole journey is to move from one step to another.
Right. So there
up this spiral till we get to total forgiveness, to a totally forgiven real world.
So you talked earlier about magic thoughts, and that's I guess kind of something I hadn't thought about that. So aren't nearly all of our thoughts magic thoughts as we're moving around in this physical world?
Yep. Yep.
And then and we change those magic thoughts by asking for connection.
Yeah, let me go to one.
That's why he constantly is engaged in telling us to learn how to see differently and to use the forgiveness process to see differently. Not to change what you see, but to see it differently.
To see differently, yeah.
And that's just what he did in the first part of his book even, was to change his thoughts about what he may be coming back to when he started running in his mind a story of, oh my gosh, this could have happened, this could have happened. And he caught himself and said, no, I'm not going to go there. He kept himself present instead of going there.
Yeah, and there's a good spot, and Randall, you weren't here for this, but we did go here, I think, last week, but let's do it again, because I think it sums up so we don't have to carry too much time on this issue of what we do with this magic thoughts idea. Let's go to page 273 of the workbook. I don't know what book you have, Randall, on yours. This should be review number 4.
What lesson is it between?
I'm sorry. Well,
I got it.
After lesson 1.
Right after lesson 140.
Lesson
Okay, I have it.
140.
So you have that section of the workbook.
It's just
Never
review
mind.
number
Yes.
4.
Okay.
Introduction.
So would you read paragraph 2 of review 4?
Paragraph 2. There is a central theme that unifies each step in the review we undertake, which can be simply stated in these words. My mind holds only that which I think with God.
Who says that? Mine says.
My mind? My mind holds only what I think with God? That is a fact and represents the truth of what you are and what your Father is. It is this thought by which the Father gave creation to the Son, establishing the Son as co-creator with Himself. It is this thought that fully guarantees salvation to the Son. For in His mind no thoughts can dwell but those His Father shares. Lack of forgiveness blocks this thought from His awareness, yet it is forever true.
For in his mind no thoughts can dwell, but those his Father shares.
Thoughts, capital T.
Yes. And, this makes allowance, in a sense, tacitly, that other thoughts can come and go. Meaning magic thoughts, for instance. Thoughts that are related to ego. Ego thoughts are thoughts that do not include the wholeness of everything. Egos cannot think anything but ego thoughts. When we're making room for our God self to come through, we're just putting that on pause for enough time to say, I don't know. I want another way to look at this. Like we were talking about in chapter 30 on rules for decision.
That's a great way to describe it, Doug.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go then now to, because last week we did 17, and I haven't even reviewed that yet, so I don't know if we're going to get to 18.
I'm sorry, where are we now?
Back in the manual for teachers,
Okay.
on,
44, what page?
yeah, on 44. And I don't know how much I need to review this. I was originally going to ask Patty if she'd read through this whole thing.
What's the heading, please?
How do God's teachers deal with magic thoughts? Without this section, the one we're going to do for today won't make much sense. So Patty, I don't know if you'd mind reading that whole section.
This whole section?
Yep.
Okay. How do God teachers deal with magic thoughts? This is a crucial question both for teacher and pupil. If this issue is mishandled, the teacher of God has hurt himself and has also attacked his pupil. This strengthens fear and makes the magic seem quite real to both of them. How to deal with magic thus becomes a major lesson for the teacher of God to master. His first responsibility in this is not to attack it. If a magic thought arouses anger in any form, God's teacher can be sure that he is strengthening his own belief in sin and has condemned himself. He can be sure as well that he has asked for depression, pain, fear, and disaster to come to him. Let him remember then, it is not this that he would teach, because it is not this that he would learn. There is, however, a temptation to respond to magic in a way that reinforces it. Nor is this always obvious. It can, in fact, be easily concealed beneath a wish to help. It is this double wish that makes the help of little value and must lead to undesired outcomes. Nor should it be forgotten that the outcome that results will always come to teacher and to pupil alike. How many times has it been emphasized that you give but to yourself? And where could this be better shown than in the kind of help the teacher of God gives to those who need his aid? Here is his gift most clearly given him, for he will give only what he has chosen for himself. And in this gift is his judgment upon the Holy Son of God. It is easier to let error be corrected where it is most apparent, and errors can be recognized by their results. A lesson truly taught can lead to nothing but release for teacher and pupil who have shared in one intent. Attack can enter only if perception of separate goals has entered, and this must indeed have been the case if the result is anything but joy. The single aim of the teacher turns the divided goal of the pupil into one direction, with the call for help becoming his one appeal. This then is easily responded to with just one answer, and this answer will enter the teacher's mind unfailingly. From there it shines into his pupil's mind, making it one with his. Perhaps it will be helpful to remember that no one can be angry at a fact. It is always an interpretation that gives rise to negative emotions, regardless of their seeming justification by what appears as facts. Regardless, too, of the intensity of the anger that is aroused. It may be merely slight irritation, perhaps too mild to even be clearly recognized. Or it may also take the form of intense rage, accompanied by thoughts of violence, fantasized or apparently acted out. It does not matter. All of these reactions are the same. They obscure the truth, and this can never be a matter of degree. Either truth is apparent or it is not. It cannot be partially recognized. Who is unaware of truth must look upon illusions. Anger in response to perceived magic thoughts is a basic cause of fear. Consider what this reaction means, and its centrality in the world's thought system becomes apparent. A magic thought, by its mere presence, acknowledges a separation from God. It states in the clearest form possible that the mind which believes it has a separate will that can oppose the will of God also believes it can succeed. That this can hardly be a fact is obvious. Yet, what it can be believed as fact is equally obvious. And herein lies the birthplace of guilt. Who usurps the place of God and takes it for himself now has a deadly enemy, and he must stand alone in his protection and make himself a shield to keep him safe from fury that can never be abated and a vengeance that can never be satisfied. How can this unfair battle be resolved? Its ending is inevitable, for its outcome must be death. How then can one believe in one's defenses? Magic again must help. Forget the battle. Accept it as fact, and then forget it. Do not remember the impossible odds against you. Do not remember the immensity of the enemy, and do not think about your frailty in comparison. Accept your separation, but do not remember how it came about. Believe that you have won it, but do not retain the slightest memory of who your great opponent really is. Projecting your forgetting onto him, it seems to you he has forgotten too.
So I'm going to just interrupt here because last week, this is where we went to a section in the text that I'm not going to take us to now, but remind everyone of, where it talks about how the ego tells us, it's this idea of this amnesia or forgetting, or accept your separation, but do not remember how it came about. This, remember from last week, is the whole prodigal journey. We don't remember leaving for our prodigal journey of specialness. We don't recall it. And then it says, believe you have won it. What? Our separation. But do not retain the slightest memory of who your great opponent really is. Well, it's this vengeance that's going to come to us for choosing this separation. This vengeance would be God, or in this case, the idea of Christ is the way I would read it. Projecting your forgetting onto him, it seems to you he has forgotten too. So Christ has forgotten. So now I'm clear. I'm okay. I'm separate here, and nobody knows I'm here. He can't find me. He's forgotten too. I don't know how I got here, but nobody knows I'm here. But then we went back into the text and we read how this is what the ego does. It tells us, we ask, where's my safety? The ego says, it is in the body. You are a body. So then we go into the body and we realize that the body is vulnerable. It can get sick and die. So we say to the ego, well, wait a minute, my safety is not in the body. Where is it? And the ego says, oh, it's in me, in your mind, it's in me. And then we say to the ego, wait a minute, you told me it was in the body. Now you're telling me it's in you. And then what that paragraph that we read goes to is, and then the ego has a solution for it. You forget the question entirely. And I mentioned last week that I've had that happen to me where I remember I am on the cusp of some revelation. And I'm just about to go there and I have my mind erased. And maybe some of you have had that happen where you know something and then boom, it's gone. So this is what it's talking about here. So I better let you go ahead and continue.
Okay. But what will now be your reaction to all magic thoughts? They can but reawaken sleeping guilt, which you have hidden but have not let go. Each one says clearly to your frightened mind, you have usurped the place of God. Think not he has forgotten. Here we have the fear of God most starkly represented, for in that thought has guilt already raised madness to the throne of God himself. And now there is no hope except to kill. Here is salvation now. An angry father pursues his guilty son. Kill or be killed, for here alone is choice. Beyond this there is none, for what has done cannot be done without. The stain of blood can never be removed, and anyone who bears this stain on him must meet with death. Into this hopeless situation, God sends his teachers. They bring the light of hope from God himself. There is a way in which escape is possible. It can be learned and taught, but it requires patience and abundant willingness. Given that the lessons manifest, simplicity stands out like an intense white light against a black horizon, for such it is. If anger comes from an interpretation and not a fact, it is never justified. Once this is even dimly grasped, the way is open. Now it is possible to take the next step. The interpretation can be changed at last. Magic thoughts need not lead to condemnation, for they do not really have the power to give rise to guilt, and so they can never be overlooked, and so they can be overlooked and thus forgotten in the truest sense. Madness but seems terrible. In truth, it has no power to make anything. Like the magic which becomes its servant, it neither attacks nor protects. It sees it, and to recognize its thought system is to look on nothing. Can nothing give rise to anger? Hardly so. Remember then, teacher of God, that anger recognizes a reality that is not there. Yet is the anger certain witness that you do believe in it as fact. Now is escape impossible until you see you have responded to your own interpretation, which you have projected on an outside world. Let this grim sword be taken from you now. There is no death. This sword does not exist. The fear of God is causeless, but his love is cause of everything beyond all fear, and thus forever real and always true.
So this word interpretation is woven throughout this entire section on magic and magic thoughts. And it tells us that what we're seeing, what we're reacting to, is not what's actually happening even within the dream. Even within this dream. It tells us in one spot, and of course there is reality to be found even within the dream. But we can't do it. Why? Because of this word, interpretation. What we think we see with our body's eyes, we automatically interpret relative to our ego selves. Facts be damned. We're going to interpret, what does this mean to me? So we're not seeing anything just as a scene being played out. We're interpreting the meaning of everything we see all along the way. And if we bring this interpretation into the teacher-student situation, then we're just in trouble from the start. What it's saying is, if we're not connected to this power to heal that is within us and within the patient, then we're just dealing off of ego interpretations of what we think we know. And that's why that's so critical, and it keeps weaving this word interpretation. We're not dealing with facts. In another section, it says the world is a fact. It also tells us in the whole course the world is an illusion. Can illusion be a fact? Yes. The way I interpret that is, a fact doesn't mean it's true. It means that it's a certain way, and it's always that way. And that, to me, is the real world, or the forgiven world. That is a fact, the way I understand this.
A fact is believable, but maybe not necessarily true.
A fact is not subject to interpretation. So anyway, we don't need to go to the next one, because I think it'd be great. How is correction made to magic thoughts? Because this is so important, covering 3 sections. It's as important as healing, because basically they're both the same. If we are healed, we are connected to our source. There's no other way to be healed. So if we're going to deal with magic thoughts and teach a student about magic thoughts, there's still no other way to do it except to be connected to our source. And what we're trying to do, the way I understand this with the student-teacher situation, is see that student connected to his source through this idea of charity, even when the student himself or herself does not see this. To draw to that singleness of purpose. To have the student realize, I need help. And then hopefully they can connect together to that source of help, which is in both minds. And if we go back again and do this again, I think it's that important. Because for myself personally, the idea of magic thoughts never stuck in my mind. Magic thoughts. What's that? What is that? You know, it's fantasy. There's a nice section on fantasy in here that I read last week. But at any rate, it's realizing that everything we do that is not heartfelt through our source, is a magic thought. That's hard to swallow for our ego selves. But that's why it's so important. How does a student, a teacher of God spend his day? That connection in the morning, that connection hourly, that connection all the way through, that connection that I didn't have when my grandson splashed water on me. I let that go. It was I was tired. We were on the beach all day. We had 6 flights of stairs to come up from the beach carrying the dogs, and then they jumped in the hot tub, and there I was with my clothes on and splash. And did I feel my connection at that time? I did not. But I sure felt the reaction. So we'll next time we go back, we'll finish with 18 on magic thoughts. But any other comments?